Well, I started with the Huelgas Ensemble as an experiment, as a laboratory. Because after my studies at the Schoolkantoren Brasiliensis, I found it very important that a modern singer or player of early music should have the same and knows the same problems and the same solutions and the same relationship between the original, what the singer had in that time, and what is the reaction now for a modern singer. So first of all, it was important to read the original, but that's not the end, that's the beginning. Because the most important is when you read and when you know how to sing the original notation, it's important to have the same reactions as the singers in that time. It's not, I didn't want to be authentic, to do as exactly in the 13th, 14th and 16th century, but anyway, it's important to know what they knew when they were singing, about text, about interpretation, about tempo, about musica ficta, what to add and what not. And one of the most important things, of course, is how to put your text under the notes. But in the originals, because the singers were all professionals, so we have good to think to the fact that the singers were composers and the composers were the singers. So there was no amateurism, and they notated only what was necessary because they knew all the rules of the counterpoint and what to add and so on. But what stays always also in that time, not a problem, but a huge challenge was how should the singer put the text under the notes? Because the text was never placed when you have, for instance, the Kyrie of a Mass, under the three first words was written Kyrie and the last note eleison. And how to sing repeat notes, make long melisms or not. So that is a thing you have to realize that was also a problem for the singers in that time, but they had solutions. There were a few 10, 12 rules which you have to follow, but in this rules possibility there was a lot of choice, of course. So a fixed score, a fixed execution was never in that time and nor now. Our more than 120 CDs is in fact a lie, because we fixed something which should be not fixed, in fact, you see. So that is the kind of problems, and the repertoire, I must say in the beginning, at the end of the 60s, 1968-9, when I began with this kind of music, there were not a lot of scores. Now, of course, the Denkmäler, all is edited, not all, but a lot is edited. How it's edited, that's another problem. Yeah. But we had to look for scores. And when our professor came at school with a new score, he found it was a feast, of course, yeah. But when my teacher in the Conservatory of Maastricht, he found I had to go to the Schoolkantoren Brasiliensis, yeah, and there opened my eyes, and there I see, well, to know what is the repertoire, to make your transcriptions yourself, to know what's all still there, yeah, you have to visit libraries. And so I started in 71, in 70 was my first visit to a library, and it was a library of Las Huelgas in Spain, the abbey in Spain, close to Burgos. And there was my first discovery of originals, and then the rest of my life I worked a lot in libraries, and I did a lot of transcriptions and so. Of course, surely in the last 15 years there are a lot of modern transcriptions, but that's very dangerous, because when as a singer you use a modern score made by one or other musicologists, then in fact you make an interpretation from already an interpretation, because also the musicologist who has to make the transcription, he has to make choices. For instance, the most simple, the text underlay, where he put the text. So when there are good transcriptions with the Huelgas, we use transcriptions, but I always control the original to see what we have to change in the transcriptions or not. And another 50% of what we are doing, singing, are my own transcriptions. See? We do every year an audition, 2 days every year audition, and it's known in the milieu of the conservatories and the specialized groups of early musicians. So we have every year, well, more and more, about 20 singers from all over Europe who are coming to us in Antwerp to do an audition. And it is already known now that these auditions are very special, because I am not looking for a beautiful voice, because what is a beautiful voice? We don't know that. We know a lot of indications and indications and describing of singing in the 15th, 16th century. What's very interesting, and that is in already the end of the 14th century, in the famous manuscript which is made in Cyprus with French art subtile music, there is one ballad which the strophes indicate how to have to sing. Yeah. That means perfectly singing proportions, that means rhythmically being perfect, and so on. So my audition is concerned about intonation. So the singer has to sing an hexachord on a text with Petrarca. They can choose their own tempo, and every line of the strophe 1 tone higher. So there I can already hear what are the tessitura possibilities of the singer. But more important is their feeling with their own voice, because it's very important that they sing exactly at the same pitch. And of course, a lot of young people are nervous and they have not so good under control. But okay, that I understand. But at the end I ask, what do you think? Did you end too high or too low? And that's important. When somebody says, I don't know, that means there is no enough relationship between your technique, your voice, and your ears. That's very important. Another important thing is the pronunciation, because when we take only the Latin, there are 5 different pronunciations of the Latin. When we have, for instance, Virgilius' text, classical text by Cipriano de Jore or so, there we use the pronunciation of the Picardian the Picardian pronunciation, because all these composers came of that region. Yeah, it's very important because in the Concile of Trente, for instance, the language was Latin, of course, but the Italian cardinals couldn't understand the French because the pronunciation and accentuation was so different. So that means that it's very important before you sing a motet that you know where is it sung, by whom is it sung, and which is the original of the text. Yeah? So that I discuss always with the people who do the auditions also. And then one of the most important things is the feeling of time. Time is tempo, tempo is rhythm. That's, I think, the most important, surely for the music of the 15th and the 16th century. Because we can't forget that, first of all, the music they made and they sang from when they were 6, 7 years old, all was silence. And the music was the color of the silence. When they rehearsed and when they sang every day in the cathedrals or in the chapels or in the abbeys, yeah, it was always the same acoustic and the same silence. So that was something fixed. We don't know that no more. A child now has no more fixed place. A child in that time was up to 10 years, when up to it went to a cathedral or an abbey school, up to then was living in the same village. They saw every year the same development of the colors of the nature, and the noise was always the same. That means nothing, only dogs, cats, and the clocks. And they were silent. When you have to think about that, they were fanatic. The intellectual persons of from the 14th century on, 14th, 15th century, were fanatic to fix tempo. The notation of the music shows very well that the development of what you could think, you had to write. So therefore, there were always new signs, new indications, because the ideas of the composer were often new, but he had no signs. So there's an incredible development we have from the 14th up to the 16th century. Yeah? So my professor told me, he said, Paul, the perfect ensemble is, think you are with 10 singers, and you begin to indicate the beginning of 1 minute. And when after 1 minute, everybody exactly at the same time lift their finger, the minute is over, that is a perfect ensemble. And that is something, and I don't know really the reason, but that is so strange, that becomes worse and worse with the years. When I compare it, why? I don't know why. Because a child from 2 years on has the beat in the pop music, and on the radio, the jazz also, the beat, they have the beat. But when I asked to sing without that beat, but sing a fixed rhythm, very difficult. That is one of the challenges for the young singers of this time.
Thank you.
Well, I have on my table, I have still for 50 years work, you know. But for me, for the beginning now in August for the new season and the next years, we will specialize doing programs and recordings also of composers who were very original, but therefore not known. So up to the invention of the music impression in 1501, Petrucci in Venice, up to then the music was made and written in or choir books or smaller, for the profane music, the smaller songbooks. But if we look at the choir books, they were written for a group and for a specific space, church. So the relationship between a choir book and the executors and the sound was very close. By printing music, that's totally away. Because somebody can in Stockholm buy the masses of Josquin-des-Prés, or in Napoli they can buy the music of and so on. So everything, so we lose the close connection. The possibilities is that, of course, by using not a choir book, but the Stimmbücher, the small books, every voice has its own book, that makes possible, for instance, the double choir technique in Venice is not thinkable without this new system, because then you can stay where you want and you have your score, you see. So that is the very, very important development. I come back now to your question. What we will do in the future now is the first composer we will do is in August, and we will record also, is the music of Blasius Amon. Blasius Amon is a composer who worked in Vienna, but he didn't choose for a profane, I mean a choir master in one or other king or emperor, but he went in an abbey. And what was very strange, his first compositions he wrote when he was 20, and at 30 he died. He died very early. But in this 9 years he composed incredible the quantity, the quality of his music. What is so strange with him is his teacher was a Franco-Flemish composer. Yeah? So he was taught by the Flemish counterpoint. But he went also 2 years to Italy, to Venice. And what is unique with him, he combines the two styles. So that's from time to time very strange. From time to time you can't think that's the same composer. That is not the same hand, but it is the same hand, and that makes it specially. There are pieces for him who are in the completely Franco-Flemish style. The other one is pure Venetian double choir music, for instance. And the most important are the pieces which combine both. So therefore I find it very interesting to make one production with this composer. And other composers are following the next years. You know, I don't feel not to take time to do once again Lassus or once again Palestrina. There are enough colleagues who do this kind of work. So I will focus me on our unknown manuscript music from the 13th, 14th, 15th century, or very important but unknown composers of the 16th century, which were not always printed. because which music is printed, which can be sold. So it has to be commercial a bit. Yeah? So more important are the composers who are not interested in commercial, but bringing their own ideas. And that colors, of course, the history of polyphony in Europe. So that's other things we will be concerned, and I hope we can do the same thing also in Budapest here.